In the last demonstration for bottle one, I demonstrated how to create the label area and then map the art in with the texture map tool. So that's this image over here on the left. So I'm going to put that away. In this next tutorial, we're going to talk about decaling. Decaling is a way of taking a map, an art map, and putting it onto the object, but it's more like a sticker than actually mapping a full texture on it. And we can do that with a transparency map, which makes the background go away. So we can isolate the image and put it anywhere on our object. The decal tool we have to bring in from our tool manager. So if you go into your workspace and go to tool manager, this whole area is all the tools that are in FormZ, and you can look at them based on category, animation, curves, all the way down through it, these different categories. The one we're going to look at right now is where our it's manage. Where did it go? Here we go. Manage. It's this tool right here, this star and this red circle called decal. If you hover over that, so you're allowed to take these and bring them into certain toolbars if you'd like. I put mine in my attributes toolbar. You can see it right here. So if you just bring this out, it will stay active, and you can use this toolbar in this fashion. So I'm going to put the decal tool there. So I have it already. So what you have to do is click down and hold on it, and it'll come with you, and you can see it in a ghosted version. And then you just drop it. Oh, I have two now. It's okay. So you can drop that down in that toolbar, so you have that ready. So we can make this go away. Okay, that's the tool we're going to use to create the art effects on these objects in this area. So decals we cannot see with our gray shaders. We have to go into render zone. So I'm going to click on render zone so I can show you what some of these decals look like. So here on the left, it looks very similar to what we did with the texture map on that label area. And in the middle one here, I'm just using a texture map to put this emblem in color on the object. And we can also use a decal tool to bring in a texture map and make it look like it's molded into the surface of the bottle. So the one on the left, we'll take a look at all three of these and also see how this art is created. So to create the art for these, that's the key with the decal tool. So for the one that's the complete label, we have to bring in our color map, just like we did on the texture map tool. So we clicked on color map, and in there are clicking our options, and then this dialog box comes up and we load. So this is some art that I have created for some of these tutorials. So this is art that you could create in Illustrator. I actually built this art in FormZ, but it's not designed to do that. I just do that because it's easier while I'm in the program. But you'll probably do this in Illustrator. So you create your art and all the imagery that you want to have. I just made this up. It's not a real brand. It's just something I'm using as a placeholder. But I have this large field around this. I'm guessing that I wanted quite a large area for when I made that as a texture map and I put it onto that label area. So here, I'm just going to use that same piece of art as the color map. And I've also created this other piece of art here. It's a black background. It's the exact same piece of art. It's just reversed, and all the copy areas are dropped out with no color. So the combination of these two things, the transparency map and the art, allows us to create this decal. So if you bring that in the color map area, we say OK. And then down here where it says transparency, we click on transparency map, which again is way at the bottom. You select that. And then under options, you bring in that transparency map I was just describing. Its outer dimensions are exactly the same as the art, because what that allows this to do is all black areas are going to make the background of the art invisible and disappear, and all the clear areas are going to allow the colored art to come through. So the combination of these two create our decal. And that's the same for these other two. We have the bump map one and then the orange one. Same thing. I'm going to click on this tool here. This time I used plain color. I'm not bringing in a piece of art. I just want that emblem to be orange in this case. And I'm going down to transparency map. And I'm going to go down to the transparency map at the bottom, the options. And here's the transparency map. So the black areas will be transparent. You can't see them. And the white areas are going to allow the color to come through. Same logic, same type of approach. And that'll be set up to use as a decal. This third one was a little bit different. What I want here is I want our decal to look like it's creating a in mold part in here, where it can be set in or protruding, concave or protruding out. So what we have to do is I set up the color of this. I added some details to make the coloring on this a little more interesting. And when we do a decal like this to show an in mold part, we need to set up the color first, because I want to make the map, the decal map, the exact same color. So I picked a color, kind of random. I just picked this gray, and I did a reflective quality on this, metal accuracy. We're going to talk about these. There's brushed and chrome and constant, a whole series of different types of reflective qualities that we can create for these materials. So this is the beginning of what's going to lead us into our rendering. So I selected metal accurate, and each one of these has a whole series of options about how reflective and how you want to do that. So again, we will get into this more in depth when we get into rendering. So this has a metal reflector on. That's why it looks a bit shinier, and my highlights are a bit stronger. Not too much. I add just a little bit. Once I set this color up, I now want to take that and I want to duplicate that. So if you right click on this, you have this feature. I mean, you can get rid of it. You can do a whole series of different things. But if you duplicate that, it will bring down another cube like this in the exact same color. I use that, but when I come over here, I added my texture map in there to create this little decal. So double click on that. So the color is the same, metal accuracy is the same, and I'm just changing the dynamics of this. The other one was a cube. When I do art like this, I usually turn it into a flat surface so I recognize that something more interesting is happening here, because sometimes they're hard to see over in that dialog box. So instead of a transparency map, what I'm going to do here, you select bump map. Again, you can select all these different things, which are all bump maps. We can add these to create different textures. And I'm going to talk about some texture mapping on our objects in the next tutorial. But right now, we're going to go with bump map. So what that allows us to do, allows us to take that art in this color with this reflective quality that I'm going to map on that bottle by using the transparency map. Again, the black areas are going to be invisible. They're going to go away. And the white areas are going to allow the object of the shape to come through. But instead of as a color field, this is going to have dimension. So down here under scale, I have it 100%, which is what the scale I want. Now, smoothness is going to define the edge, which we'll see in a moment. And then amplitude is how much of an embossing it is. If I bring that close to 0, you won't see anything. If I do it into negative 100, it will make it a concave detail and not convex. Right now I have it protruding out, so I have it at 100% sticking out. So that is another way of using a decal tool. And that's these three different effects. I'm just going to show you again, and then I'll show you how to bring those in with the decal tool. Okay, so let's go back to our gray shader. So let's come down to our attributes, where you should have your decal tool at this point. So you click on that, and let's go to the first object. I'm going to select that. This dialog box will come up. And this is very similar. This interactive area is very similar to how we did the texture map tool. So you have to click on this plus sign, and it'll give us our first texture group. You can have multiple decals on one object. and you can move them anywhere on the object. So you can have several different things. You can use different colors because each map will have its own attributes. You can make them overlap. There are priorities. The first one goes to the back, and as you subsequently add them, they layer on top of one another. So we're just going to do one at this point in this position. So down here where it says set material, this is the map. That's one that we can barely see. That's the map that created that label. So if you double click on that, it'll bring that into this material area. At this point, don't worry about color, reflection, opacity. We'll talk about those features later. So right now that art is in here. I have determined where it's going to be because this takes a little time to move this around. But like we did the texture map tool, we're going to make this flat because I'm going to push that right onto the front. I'm going to set my proportions to this label or texture map because they're both the exact same proportion. And I am going to do center and center. And by playing with this, I determined that this particular map works at 3 inches wide, and I'm locking my proportion, so I don't really have to worry about the vertical. I'm just doing the horizontal at this point. And now we can select these tools to move that, or we can use our origin numbers. I know they have X, Y, and Z. It gets a little confusing. To put that, like Z makes this thing go up and down. The X goes side to side, and the Y goes front to back, which you won't see in this orientation. So this can get a little challenging. So you have to play with this a little bit. Once you get a feel for it, you'll go, okay, I understand. It's just allowing me to move the texture map around. Of course, again, orientation, I have it 90 degrees, so it's in the front, facing on that. So we can't see our texture map, so we have to click on render zone, and there's the map. I have moved it around, and when I first brought it in, it was way down here at the bottom, so I just moved it up and positioned it and changed it and took a look at it. So you can go to all these other axonometric orientations. Now I have it perfectly to the front, so now I can see how it's sitting on the object straight on there. So I got to the point where I was like, okay, I like that. It's a good proportion, and we're okay. So that's bringing that map in. The rest of them are the same process. So this is the right map. Okay, no, I did the wrong one. So decal. Okay, so I'm looking at my little map down here. So I have my little orange emblem set there. Same process. Select that, double click on that, that comes in. Set up my texture group, just a plus sign and texture group one. You can label that if you'd like, if you have multiples, keep that confusing. And these settings are all probably very similar because it is on the same location. And again, if we click on render zone, it shows that emblem in color on there without any background. So if I were to change the color of that bottle, that orange emblem would always stay exactly that orange color, and there's no background around it. So that's what's nice about decals. Like I said, it's like a sticker that we're putting on our object. And then, of course, the last one is this kind of dimensional texture map that we're putting on here. Oops, I didn't deselect. Similar process. So now you can bring this in, and you can see it's all the same color. If I were to change the color of the body of this bottle, you would see this square sitting on there because it's only a bump map. We don't want that background. We want all the background and the emblem to be exactly the same color. That's why it's critical to do when you do a bump map and you want it to look like an embossing on an object. You need to make the exact same color. Okay, so that's it for creating decals. And we'll do more about rendering and perspective and point of view in the next tutorial.